The first lesson you ever learned about money was not taught at a table. It was hidden in a coffee can. Your grandmother kept cash in one of those old Maxwell House tins, the kind with the red lid, pushed all the way to the back of the cabinet above the refrigerator. It was emergency money, always there, never growing, never moving. Just sitting in the dark, waiting for something bad to happen. And without anyone saying it out loud, that became your first financial education. Money was not freedom. Money was not leverage. Money was not something that could build a future. Money was protection from disaster. A thin wall between your family and the next thing that might go wrong. Nobody sat you down and said, "We are poor." It was quieter than that. It was your mother's face when the car made a sound it didn't make yesterday. It was your father changing the subject when someone mentioned retirement. It was the way every conversation about the future eventually got smaller, softer, and then disappeared completely. You learned the rules by watching people avoid the subject. You learned that asking for things created a kind of pain in the room. Not because your parents were cruel, they weren't. They loved you with everything they had. But sometimes everything they had was not enough. So you stopped asking. You learned to rotate the same few shirts and act like it was a choice. You learned to say, "I don't want to go," when the truth was the school trip cost $12 and it was the wrong week. You learned to smile when someone else got something new, and you learned to make yourself need less. That is what poverty does when it enters a child quietly. It does not just limit what you can buy. It teaches you what you are allowed to want. And somewhere along the way, wanting more started to feel dangerous. Ambition felt like something other people were born with. People on television, people with parents who knew accountants, people whose families talked about college funds, investments, businesses, and property. Like those things were normal words. But in your house, the future had a ceiling. No one pointed at it. No one had to. You just kept growing until you hit it. And when you hit it, you were supposed to stop. That was the script. Be grateful. Be realistic. Don't get too big for where you came from. And for a long time, you listened. But something in you never fully settled. There was this quiet pressure in your chest. This feeling that the map you inherited did not match the world you were standing in. Like the rules were real, but maybe they were not universal. Like maybe your family had mistaken survival for wisdom because survival was the only thing they had ever been allowed to practice. Then one night, something cracked. Maybe you were 17, maybe 22, maybe older. You were sitting somewhere ordinary, a break room, a bus seat, your bedroom at midnight, with the laptop screen lighting up your face while everyone else slept. And you saw someone who did not seem smarter than you. They were not chosen. They were not magical. They just believed something you had never been allowed to believe. They believed the ceiling was not real. And once that thought entered your mind, it did not leave. It scared you first, not inspired you, scared you. Because if the ceiling was not real, then the life you were handed was not the only life available. And if another life was available, then staying the same was no longer just bad luck. It was a choice. That was the moment your old life began to loosen its grip. Quietly, privately, before anyone else could see it. So you started quietly. That was the only safe way to start. You did not announce it at dinner. You did not tell your cousins you were learning about money. You did not tell your friends you were studying people who built businesses, bought assets, changed their lives, and refused to accept the story they were born into. You already knew what would happen if you said it out loud. Someone would laugh. Someone would say, "Be careful." Someone would remind you of another person who tried and failed, as if failure was proof that ambition itself was the disease. Your circle had a way of doing that. It could smell change before change had a name. It treated ambition like a threat to the group. If you dreamed too loudly, people did not always hear hope. Sometimes they heard rejection. Because when you say, "I want more," some people hear, "I think I'm better than this," even when that is not what you mean. So you kept it private. You read at night. You watched videos with headphones in. You saved quotes you were too embarrassed to admit meant something to you. You filled notebooks with ideas that looked simple on paper and impossible in real life. And slowly, a second world began forming inside your mind. In the outside world, you still looked the same. Same job, same room, same old conversations. Same people asking the same questions. But inside, something had moved. You started noticing things you used to ignore. The car payment that kept someone trapped. The raise that disappeared into a nicer apartment. The family member who always said rich people were greedy, but secretly wished money would rescue them. The friend who mocked discipline because comfort was the only thing he had left. You were not judging them. You were recognizing the pattern. And once you see the pattern, you cannot unsee it. That is when the first real loneliness begins. Not the loneliness of having no one around, The loneliness of realizing that the people around you are still speaking the old language, and you are starting to think in a new one. You try your first thing. Maybe it is a small business, maybe content, maybe investing, maybe a side job nobody respects because it does not look impressive yet. Maybe it fails in a week. Maybe it survives for 6 months, just long enough to make you believe in it before it dies quietly. And when it fails, it hurts more than you expected. Not because of the money only, because for a moment you wonder if everyone was right. Maybe you were delusional. Maybe you were just another person from a struggling family who watched too many success stories and mistook motivation for ability. Maybe the ceiling was not invisible because it was fake. Maybe it was invisible because it was everywhere. That thought follows you for a while. It shows up when you are tired. It shows up when your bank account looks almost the same after months of sacrifice. It shows up when your friends are out living normal lives, laughing in restaurants, taking trips, buying things, while you are at home trying to build something that still has no proof. Then comes the part nobody posts, the ugly middle, the season where you are working harder than ever, but nothing about your life looks better yet. Your friends stop inviting you out, not because they hate you, they just get used to your absence. At first, they ask, then they assume. Then your name slowly stops appearing in the group chat plans. You tell yourself it is fine. And part of it is, but sacrifice still costs something, even when you choose it. Your family starts asking questions with fear under them. When is this going to become something real? They are not trying to crush you. They are trying to protect you with the only tools they know. In your family, risk has never looked like opportunity. Risk has always looked like eviction, late bills, shame, and starting over from less. So when they see you taking risks, they do not see vision. They see danger. And you cannot fully blame them. But you also cannot go back. Because the old version of you, the one who could shrink himself enough to fit inside the old life, is gone now. You do not feel powerful yet. You feel split in half. One part of you still hears the old warnings. The other part has already seen the open sky, and that split becomes your new normal for a while. You learn how to act ordinary while carrying an entire private war inside your head. You go to work, you answer messages, you sit at family dinners, you laugh at the right moments. But underneath all of it, you are counting. Counting hours, counting dollars, counting how many months of savings you have left, counting how many times you can fail before the people who doubted you start sounding reasonable. Then one day, something finally moves. Not everything, just something. Maybe your side income covers rent for the first time. Maybe a stranger pays you for something you created. Maybe an investment grows enough to make you stare at the screen twice. Maybe the number in your account is not life-changing yet, but it is bigger than anything the old version of you believed was possible. And the strange part is, nothing dramatic happens. No music, no applause, no one runs into the room and says, "I knew you could do it." It is just you, sitting there, looking at a number. A quiet number. A number that would mean nothing to someone else, but means everything to you because you know what it cost. You know the nights behind it. You know the meals you skipped, not because you were broke, but because you were trying to stay disciplined. You know the invitations you turned down. You know the mornings when your body felt heavy before the day even started. You know the private humiliation of trying something, failing, and then having to try again before your confidence had healed. So you want to tell someone, but then you realize you do not know who. The person you most want to tell would not understand why it matters. Not because they do not love you. They do. But they did not live inside the version of you that had to become this. Explaining the win would require explaining the pain. And you are too tired to translate your whole life tonight. So you close the laptop. You sit in the dark for a minute. And for the first time, you do not just hope the ceiling can break. You know it. That is when your fear changes. Before, you were afraid it would never work. Now you are afraid it will work, and then stop. This is the part people do not expect. The first real success does not always make you relaxed. Sometimes it makes you more protective, more careful, more private. You stop talking about your plans, not because you are ashamed, but because you have learned that young dreams are fragile. They do not need everyone's opinion. They need oxygen, time, and silence. So you reinvest. You stay uncomfortable on purpose. You keep the old phone. You keep the cheap apartment. You let other people look richer than you because you have finally understood something most people learn too late. Looking successful and becoming free are not the same game. One game wants attention. The other wants patience. And patience is hard when you grew up watching everyone run out of time, money, energy, and options. But now your scoreboard is different. You are no longer trying to prove that you are better than where you came from. You are trying to prove that where you came from does not get to decide where the story ends. That shift changes you. You become quieter, not cold, just less available to noise. You stop explaining every move to people who are committed to misunderstanding it. You stop asking for permission from people who have never been where you are trying to go. And little by little, money stops being just a number. It becomes evidence. Evidence that your family's fear was real, but not final. Evidence that the life you inherited was powerful, but not permanent. Evidence that maybe the ceiling was never made of concrete. Maybe it was made of repetition. And if repetition built it, repetition can break it. And as that evidence grows, your life begins to change before you are ready to explain it. At first, the change is small. You stop panicking when a bill arrives. You stop checking your account with fear in your stomach. You stop feeling like one mistake could pull the whole floor out from under you. Then the numbers get bigger, quietly, month after month, year after year. The thing you were building in private starts becoming too real to ignore. And one ordinary day, maybe at your kitchen table, maybe in your car, maybe at a desk you once felt guilty for buying, you run the numbers again, the way you have run them 100 times before. Only this time, they cross. 7 figures. For a second, you do not move. You check again. You close the screen. You open it again. You stare at your own name beside a number no one in your family ever taught you how to hold. And the strangest thing is, it is quiet. You thought becoming the first millionaire in your family would feel like a movie scene. You thought something inside you would finally relax. You thought the child who worried about $12 would stand up and clap. But instead, you sit there in a silence so deep it almost feels like grief. Because now you have reached a place your family has no language for. You want to call your mother. So you do. You talk about normal things, food, weather, work, whether you are sleeping enough. And you never say the number. Not because you are hiding it, because you do not know how to say it without making distance appear in the room. So you say, "I'm doing okay." And she says, "Good. Eat something real." And somehow that almost breaks you. Because money solved the old fear, but it did not erase the old love. It did not erase the gap. It did not erase the guilt of knowing you can help now. But every kind of help changes something. That is the part nobody prepares you for. The money is not the finish line. It is the doorway. On the other side are new questions. How do you protect it? How do you invest it? How do you help without becoming the rescue plan? How do you give your future children safety without stealing their hunger? How do you become the person your family calls for answers when you are still learning the questions? This is when you understand what wealth really is. It is not just having more. It is becoming responsible for what more can do. You are not just the first millionaire. You are the first bridge, the first blueprint, the first person in the family tree who has to learn how to turn survival into structure. And maybe the people who come after you will never understand what it took. They will not remember the coffee can. They will not know the sound of your mother's worried silence. They will not feel the weight of the nights when quitting sounded reasonable. And that is okay. That is the point. You did not do this so they could admire your struggle. You did it so they would not have to inherit it. You took the ceiling your family kept hitting and made it the floor beneath their feet. So if you are in the middle of this right now, if you are tired, unseen, misunderstood, and still building something nobody can clap for yet, keep going. Not for applause, not for revenge, not to prove you were better than where you came from, but because someone in your bloodline has to be the last person who learns money through fear. Let it be you. And if this story felt like it was speaking directly to a part of your life you rarely explain, subscribe and stay close. Because the next chapter is not about getting rich. It is about becoming the kind of person who can carry wealth, protect peace, and build a future your family once thought was impossible.